Hello friends, welcome to AQBIS YouTube channel. This session is a part of our quick revision series Prelims Atulya. In today's session, we'll discuss some more basic concepts related to Indian economy. In the last session as well, we discussed some significant concepts. So we are actually continuing our last session. So let's get started. Let's discuss some more concepts related to Indian economy. First, let's talk about microfinance institutions. See, microfinance institutions, these institutions are NBFCs, societies, cooperatives, and these provide loans to low income population. Okay, so microfinance, let's try to understand the word microfinance. Microfinance means a very small amount. Okay, suppose you want to expand your business, or maybe you want to establish your setup and you need some assistance, and you do not want to approach the traditional bank, because you know that when you approach a traditional bank and you want to take the loan, then you will be needing the collateral. Okay, but from the microfinance institution, when you approach a microfinance institution, you do not need any collateral. Procedure is very easy, process is very smooth, and you can easily get the loan. Okay, so these microfinance institutions, these provide financial services to low income population. So you have to understand that this microfinance concept, it is very famous in developing world. In fact, this concept, it originated in Bangladesh. Remember this fact. And Mr. Muhammad Yunus, he was instrumental in bringing this concept into light. Okay, so microfinance institutions, these provide financial services to those people who are far away from the traditional banking system. But if you examine, then this traditional banking system, which are our banks, normal banks, registered banks, and microfinance institutions, so the rationale behind microfinance institution is to bring these people closer to traditional bank. How? See, when they are getting the assistance from the microfinance institutions, then they will be able to establish their setup. They will have the money, and once they have the money, they can afford to expand the business, and in the future they will be approaching the traditional banking system when they have to take the big loan. So the idea is to bring these people closer to traditional banking system. So now let's move to another concept. It is related to liquidity trap. See, liquidity trap, it is a situation in economy when the interest rate is low. Okay, interest rate is low, and so people, they have started taking the loan, and once they have started taking the loan, then they have realized that deposit rate is high. So those people, they will, instead of investing this money, they will deposit the money which they have taken in the form of loan. Let me try to make you understand. See, the RBI, it lends the money to banks. So these banks, they are taking the money at low repo rate. It means RBI has reduced the repo rate. Why? So that money can be infused into economy. So once the repo rate is very less, then banks will be lending the money. Why? Because they will have excessive amount of money, so they will start lending. So they will reduce the rate at which they are lending the money. But in this situation, deposit rate is also high. So lending rate is very less and deposit rate is very high. So what will happen is that people will take the loan, but instead of investing the money, they will deposit it back to banks. So this will create the liquidity trap. Okay, so this concept is very important and can be asked in your prelims. Now let's move to another concept. This concept is very important, and there might be a potential question in your prelims. So this stagflation, it is a situation in the economy when the inflation is rising, but the economic growth is very low. So economic growth is low, inflation is rising, and people do not have the jobs. It means high unemployment, low economic growth, and inflation is rising. Okay, so this situation can be characterized as stagflation. Okay, let me repeat one more time that production is not happening. It means GDP is very low, plus people are losing their jobs, unemployment is rising, and inflation is also rising. So this situation can be termed as stagflation. Do not forget, this is very, very important. Now let's talk about this concept neobank. See, this neobank, this term, it is used for fintech firms. So these fintech firms provide financial services, but they use technology. I mean, they do what banks have been doing. They provide financial services, but they use artificial intelligence, information communication technology, and other digital means. Okay, so remember, fintech firms, these are termed as neobanks. Okay, so these neobanks provide financial services through digital means. It means they do not have any physical presence, they do not have any physical branches, so everything is digital in the case of neobanks. Okay, and remember, they tie up with banks, other banks, generally small banks, and they provide financial services. Remember, they use technology, artificial intelligence, and other digital methods to provide the financial services. Just remember, neobanks are fintech firms. Okay, now let's talk about Hindu rate of growth. Here you have to understand one thing, that before 1990s the economic growth was very low, but after 1991, it means after LPG reforms, the growth rate increased considerably. So we saw that thing. Now before 1991, in this period, particularly from 1950 to 1980, there was this stagnated low economic growth, and that growth was 3.5%. Now we have a term in order to define this economic growth. Why? Because this was the stagnated low economic growth, and we have a name for this particular low economic growth, and that name is Hindu rate of growth. Let me repeat one more time that before LPG reforms, there was a period from 1950s to 1980s. In this period, there was this stagnated low economic growth of 3.5%. And this growth is known as Hindu rate of growth. Now this term has lost the relevance. Why? Because after 1991, we saw the rise, we saw the increase in economic growth. Okay, now let's move to another concept. Now let's talk about Global Manufacturing Risk Index. See, this index, remember, it is published by Cushman and Wakefield. So this name becomes very, very important. Remember, this Cushman and Wakefield, it is a US based property consultant, and it publishes this Global Manufacturing Risk Index. And why this index is very, very important? Because India has overtaken the US to become second most sought manufacturing destination globally. Although US has been overtaken, but China remains at number one position. So this index becomes very, very important, can be asked in your prelims. Now let's talk about Financial Inclusion Index. See, this index, it is published by Reserve Bank of India. Okay, and this index, it captures the financial inclusion in our country. So this index, it measures the financial inclusion on the scale of 0 to 100. So when the score is 0, it means absolute financial inclusion. It means no financial inclusion. And when the score is 100, it means absolute financial inclusion. It means financial inclusion, this target we have achieved completely, and this is known as absolute financial inclusion. Now, one important fact regarding this index is that it does not take into account the base year. So this is very, very important, that in the case of financial inclusion index, RBI does not take into account the base year. So base year is not considered while calculating the score. So this is very, very important. See, I have provided the information regarding wholesale price index and consumer price index also, and we have made a couple of videos on these indices, so we will attach the link in the description box, and you can download these notes. And do not forget to revise these notes. Prelims is coming near, it is around the corner. So right now revision is the key. Keep putting the efforts, and if you have any doubts, any suggestions, you can mention in the comment section. Keep working hard. We are expecting a lot from all of you. So that's all for today's session. I'll see you in the next session soon. Thank you very much. Bye bye. Take care.